In this episode of the Wild Party podcast, we talk to Trina Bowman, the founder, creator, and chief candle maker behind E's Essential Candle Company. Trina's entrepreneurial journey began in the music industry, where she built a successful career in management, music publishing, and A&R. But her desire for a creative outlet, one where she could create luxurious, non-toxic, sustainable candles that transform the atmosphere of any room and provide an immersive sensory experience. Trina talks about the chemistry and craftsmanship that go into each of her handcrafted candles, how she balances luxury with sustainability, and the challenges of building a small business in a competitive industry. She'll share her insights on how pop-up events and customer feedback have helped shape her brand, as well as her plans to expand. If you're passionate about small businesses, sustainability, or simply love a good candle, this episode is packed with inspiration and practical tips. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stephanie Lahart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the show, Trina. I am so excited
Thank
to have you
you.
today.
I'm excited to be here.
Wow, you have one of those products that I really wish at this point in the internet development we had fully integrated smell-o-vision. Be-
Right?
right? Because Miss Trina here is the founder, creator, brains behind E's Essentials Candle Company, which I wish I could fully describe to our listening audience how amazing the smell of these candles were.
Thank
Because I'm going to
you.
tell you right now, I'm not a big candle girl. But when I met you at that pop-up recently in West Hollywood and I saw your beautiful display, I immediately was sticking my nose into every one of those containers that you were showing me. And I'm not candle girl, which I have to tell you was
Thank
amazing for
you.
me to be like, yes, this is gorgeous.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Truly.
Yeah, so I mean, I was telling Trina before we got on, I had to apologize because I ran over to her table and immediately launched into please be on my podcast. I barely gave you any time to talk. And when I got home and started doing research on you, I was like, wait a minute. I should have spent more time because Trina has this amazing background in the music industry. Um, and here's the funny part, Trina. I actually moved to LA with the intention of doing the exact thing that you're doing. I wanted to be an
Oh,
A&R.
wow.
That
Oh,
was my thing.
wow.
Yes, and I wanted to do
Wow.
music development and be a manager. And I look at your resume and who you are. I'm like, she literally is living my life because I did do that. I got online and started developing websites and now do marketing. But I was like, I want to hear about everything. I want to hear about the music. I want to hear
Thank
about the
you.
candle business. And I know my audience does too. So let's take it back just a little before we dive
Okay.
into the candle aspect of Miss Trina as the music industry mogul that you are.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. That's a big word.
But it's true. I mean, you've been in the business for a really long time before you branched out to candle making. So
Sure.
I just want to go back to the beginning because you're obviously a very creative person. Tell
Yes.
me a little bit about your experience in the music industry, particularly, the creativity and collaboration, and things like that. Like, how did you get started in music?
I always preface this conversation as it found me. I didn't find it. I was 14 years old when it came to me that the music industry was a career that I was supposed to pursue. It was just so vivid, and I'm going to try to condense this story as much as possible. But Long story short, once that came over me at the tender age of 14, I started, when we still had CDs, I started reading liner notes and who produced, who wrote, who was the A&R, who was the label that was responsible for the project. Um, and I started researching everyone that was in those liner notes as well and their stories as much as I could. I feel like Google just became a accessible resource for us at that time. It feels like ages ago. Um, and I knew then that it would be a tough industry for a woman, better yet, a triple minority. So I said to myself that, listen, if I'm going to pursue this, I'm going to make sure I educate myself, make sure that I can speak for myself. So I chose to study sound engineering, and I did that. I started sound engineering school at just the age of 17 years old while I was still in high school. And I did a full comprehensive program. And that was to give me the vocabulary to be able to speak audio so that in short, I couldn't be taken advantage of in the studio. I could articulate what I heard and I could articulate um, on a prospective client's behalf as well to have the optimum products delivered. And I knew if I wanted to be an A&R, that was a skill set that could be very helpful. And then jump to that. By 19, I was interning at major record companies in New York City, then J and Jive Records, two of the best labels at the time. It was a lot of fun. And I could go down the timeline, but long story short, it morphed into me taking on a role here in Los Angeles that morphed into management. And then I found a love for publishing and artist development. And I spent 5 years of my career helping creative community and the producer songwriter sector renegotiate their high level publishing contracts just because they were archaic deal terms at that time that made them feel stuck while they were producing top hits. Their business was not aligning, their business structure was not aligning with their success. So it just became a passion of mine, and I enjoyed reading legalese and contracts. And I'm gifted, and I say this with humility, and my ability to speak multiple languages. I can speak to the creative community, I can speak audio, I can speak to the executives, I can speak to the lawyers, and have it all make sense. And I chose to use that skill set for the betterment of the creative community. And there's so much more I could color that story with, but that's in a nutshell. And as of late, I've just been working on high level legacy projects.
Yeah, well, with that said, everything that you've done in the past with music made you the perfect candidate to start your own product-based business.
Yes.
So first of all, I will say I was also one of those people that sat there looking through liner notes, researching people and being like,
Hmm.
"Oh my God, how does this all work together?" And I'll just let you know, I was doing this before Google. I'm quite a bit older than you,
Okay.
and I was writing physical letters to people. I was the letter girl, writing
I
letters
did
to like a little
too.
fangirl, like, "Oh, how is it to work with this band and all this?" So really, I really thought I was going to end up in music, but like I said, the internet
I
found me, and
did
that
the
was it.
same thing.
I love that you follow through because we do need people like you. There's always this aspect of people being so creative that they don't have a business sense, and then they're not left with,
Hmm.
I guess, the spoils of their, true work
Sure.
that goes off to someone else, and they work so hard, and then they find like, wow, I'm barely making a living. And we could talk about
Hmm.
streaming services, but I'll leave that for another podcast,
That's a whole nother
a
podcast.
whole nother
We
show.
could we could have chapters.
We could have chapters on that, absolutely. But like I said, with that said, I really believe, you're working with the creative community like that made you such a perfect candidate to get into small business. So let's talk
Yeah.
about that. So, like I said, I am research girl like you, and I did read on your Instagram that you had a big aha breakthrough moment during the pandemic
Hmm.
where you really had to think about, I think, what you were doing and the joy it was bringing to your life. Let's say it like
Sure.
that. Let's talk
Hmm.
about what that was. You gave us that moment where you had to pause and reflect. So how did
Hmm.
that time of reflection contribute to the clarity that you have today and inspire the creation of your candle business?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. In short, there's so many parallels to the product industry and the music industry. And I say this with the utmost respect, but a lot of people aren't aware of the simplicity of understanding that developing talent is a creative muscle that you have to exercise, but ultimately you're developing a brand. And that parallel I was able to transfer over to the candle business. But before I get into that, during the pandemic, the true story is I was always a candle enthusiast. I've been purchasing candles since I was a kid. I was introduced to the luxury sector of candles when I was 19 and I started interning at record companies. I was introduced to a lot of new things then. And but the greatest experience was just having this amazing throw that could fill the space and this, complex multisensory experience that I just thought was so lovely. But I found during the pandemic, I said, I don't think it's responsible for me to have a monthly candle budget. So I went on this hunt to find a high level luxury candle that offered the same complex multisensory experience that I was used to, had a sense of equal consciousness to it, and also was at a little bit more of a fair price point where I didn't feel guilty on my indulgence. However, I shopped over the globe, the UK, United States, and I continuously purchased and tried, and they weren't performing to my expectation at that time. And I got so frustrated when I was laying down and I had one of them burning, and I was like, gosh. And something came over me. It was just like, make your own candles. So that's the commencement of the inspiration of the candle journey, but also just being mindful, just to kind of hit your question in its totality. In addition to that, I was also just as an entrepreneur being mindful that I was spreading my eggs in multiple baskets too, right? The music industry runs through my veins. It like pumps out of out of my heart. I could never run from it, even if I tried. I have, and it always pulls me back. um, but ultimately, this was my creative outlet. I was always endorsing and nurturing the music community's creative outlet, making sure that they had the resources and the comfortability to excel as the creatives, the songwriters, producers, and artists in the industry. But I hadn't had that outlet for myself. So candle making became my meditation, my peace of mind. It is, I would just completely zen out and zone out, and it became my art.
Yeah, and I do find that with many entrepreneurs I talk to that they say this became somewhere fun for me to play, like a creative outlet just for me.
Mm-hmm.
And we find this in people. I often find this in people in academia where like these high level professors, maybe they're a history professor, and then suddenly they'll become like a fiction writer because you need this creative outlet to be able to pour something
Yes.
else into. And then we often think, well, how do they do everything? Because everything takes a certain amount of time and
Yes.
knowledge and things like that. But with the candle business, first of all, it's an affordable luxury, as
Yes.
you said yourself.
Thank you.
But it also is something that can really change a person's day, which,
Absolutely.
I can just tell, by talking to the brief amount that we have that that means something to you, that
Absolutely.
you want that. And obviously with music that happens, like music
Mm-hmm.
changes people's lives, and having such a sensory focused product like Ease Essential Candles, it's the same thing. It can change, it can elevate somebody's mood, it can elevate their day, it can change, kind of how they're dealing with something. So I found that a
Absolutely.
perfect segue for you. It made sense. It wasn't totally out of left field, which this. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but my question then is for you, like, what? So you decide to yourself, like, I was looking for candles myself, and you start
Mhm.
doing a certain amount of research. So then, what were the initial steps that you had to take to kind of turn your vision into a reality? Because we're going to
Sure.
talk about the beautifulness of your brand and your candles in a second.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I do want to touch on that on what you stated last, which is I do not take the responsibility of bringing something into someone's home, their sanctuary, their intimate space. I'm very mindful of the intention that goes into making the candles because aromatherapy is real and it can change someone's mood. And the love that you put in it can be felt. So I thank you for that. Yeah, I absolutely don't take that responsibility lightly. But to answer your question, Regarding and that was, could you repeat the last part again? I just want to make sure I answer it correctly.
I wanted to find out what were so once you decided,
Oh,
you were really interested in candles, what were the initial steps you had to take to turn your vision into a reality? How did you start approaching, well, I'm going to have a candle business?
so ultimately I became the consumer. I was the consumer, right? So I built the company, I built the brand, I built my formulas because everything is formulated by me. I spent 2 years developing all of my formulas. Candle making is an incredibly difficult science because you're dealing with elements of nature, right? Fire. But to pedal back a little bit, I sat down and said, what do I want? What do I need? And aesthetically speaking, I'm a fan of minimalistic luxury. I find that it can live in all different types of decor, which is something that I went for. And one of my biggest complaints as a consumer was purchasing a candle, loving the way it smelled, lighting it, and then not smelling it. It's like that's the reason I purchased it. And what we call in the candle world, that's called cold throw, and not filling the room, that's called hot throw. So I was very disappointed a multitude of times of why the cold throw was so beautiful and the hot throw just was not performing. So that was I was not going to launch until all of my candles had equally a great cold throw as it did a hot throw. So that was the science. That really was just, in addition to the complexity of the notes and formulating the actual aromas themselves, but it was really getting the performance of the candle wax with the flame and the fragrance aroma itself as well. So just to double back, it was really about being the consumer, thinking about everything that I wanted from a candle, which ultimately birthed these essentials.
Yeah, and I noticed on your website that you did make a point to mention, the longevity of the burning. Many of your candles, I
Yes,
think you burn like 50 or more hours, which is amazing.
yes.
Again, going back to myself, I'm not a usual candle person. Like you would never find me in the Bed Bath Beyond kind of stores. And here's the reason why. I find their scents overwhelming and
Hmm.
artificial in a way that almost makes me gag. Now, when I
Yep.
walked over to your table, I said, like I said, I noticed your branding first. And I
Thank
was not going
you.
to be like smelling the candles. In fact, you probably didn't notice, but I didn't immediately like stick my face in a
Yep.
candle. But when
Hmm.
I did, we talked a little bit and I noticed, I'm like, I'm not being overwhelmed. This is weird. So I went to pick up a candle to smell it. And then you gave me one of the beakers and you said, the beakers that were covering the candles, you said, no,
Hmm.
smell this, and then you'll get a better sense of it. I said, oh, okay. And when I did, I was like, oh my God, I love these smells. Like I would buy this candle and I never have that reaction, Trina, ever. I
Thank
mean,
you so much. That's the
seriously.
compliment right there. Is
Yeah.
it's about the recipient of it, and that is what matters to me most. I would not continue this business if I didn't have that response. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, the gorgeous subtleness of it. I was like, I would buy this candle and burn it in my home. And I can't tell you how many candles I've given away when people give me presents.
Gift
I'm like,
them
I
to
can't get
you.
rid of them. And yours, honestly, and then we even started talking about scents, and you were asking me like what were the scents I gravitated towards, and I said
Hmm.
citrusy. And the note that I couldn't remember at the time, I said there's a heavy scent I've always been drawn to. And I looked up the perfume finally, and it's that perfume called Opium. It's kind of an older
Okay.
perfume if you remember. And it's weird because I just said I'm not a heavy scent person, but there's something about it I love. So I
Okay.
think, like you were saying, it really, scents can really speak to people on such a
Hmm.
different level. So let me ask you then, in regards to you were deciding I'm going to have this business, and it's a lot. It is, chemistry and all that. How did you learn to do what you're doing now,
Yes.
because you did it in such a way that you have converted a person who just said they don't like candles to, I'm going to buy a candle from this woman.
Well, I mean, that's the point right there, right? It's something that is present but not overwhelming. And it's also acknowledging that every individual experiences aroma very differently. While one person, like my sister, she can't live without my white tea bergamot, my lemon verbena, my wild orange cypress, but this has nothing to do with my brand. She does not enjoy the scent of lavender. It
Mm.
just does not, her body chemistry and lavender, it just doesn't mix. So we just keep lavender away from her, but that's okay. And then I have customers that love lavender and can't live without my candle because they love lavender. So it's being mindful that everybody experiences aroma very differently, but also having complexity to it. In addition to having complexity, it's also being mindful of the ingredients, right? Because as you mentioned, when you would go into stores, you could smell this how synthetic it was. So I was very mindful of making sure that my candles didn't have parabens, phthalates, mutagen free, carcinogenic free, because while it may be scentless, I feel like you can still tell when something is synthetic and toxic. So I was very mindful of all of the components that I put in my candles. Did that answer your question? I just want to make sure.
No, you absolutely did. And in light of that, it's like I'm just wondering, what were some of the significant challenges you faced during the research and development of your candles,
Oh my goodness.
and how did you overcome it? Because you've spent a lot of time and thought into the chemistry of it. So
Yeah.
talk
So
about that a little bit.
it's interesting. So some people know this and some people don't. But while I was pursuing, and I was a teenager pursuing my career in the music industry, I was very honest with myself and I said it's going to be a while before I can make a living in the music industry. So while I was in high school, my last 2 years, instead of finishing junior senior, I was able to go to a vocational school. So I did cosmetology while I was in audio engineering. And I had a very quiet but successful career in that industry as a national hair colorist for L'Oreal's brand Redken. So I had always had a love for chemistry and I had a love for understanding things on just a molecular level, right? And understanding that certain molecules and atoms and bonds contribute to how the chemistry reaction happens to anything that's applied to um, hair, and it was very true for candles as well. There are certain fragrance oils that have larger molecules than others. They're more dense, which requires perhaps less of the potency as opposed to some that have a lighter molecular weight to them, which I try to introduce this without sounding like a complete I want to say disrespectful, but I'm just a bit of a geek nerd in this. I love it. I love science. I light up when I talk about it. I'm not a certified chemist by any means, but that all said, that background and understanding formulation with hair color as a national hair colorist, I traveled the country educating, and did fashion week and all types of fun stuff in New York City. But that background of patience and understanding the principles of chemistry was very much so applicable in the candle making process. And it also gave me the unwavering determination not to give up. There were many times I was going to throw the flag in because I mean, I would find the perfect formula and I'd do a burn test because every candle has to be burn test from top to bottom. Most importantly, for safety reasons. Secondly, for performance, of course. Um, and as mentioned, my smallest candle, aside from my discovery ones, burned for 50 hours. So you can imagine how time consuming it was. And every room there was a tester going on. It was insane. But a multitude of times, I got stuck where, one of my formulas wasn't performing the way I wanted to. And I would have to go back to the drawing board and I really had to evaluate, okay, why did without going too much detail and like boring you all, but why is this flame going small on me and then extinguishing without me doing anything and studying that there's wick clogging and why is my wick clogging and understanding that one of the molecules of my components was too big for that. It was, again, I'm not going to bore you all, but I was fascinated with the science of it and a lot of determination. So yeah, it was 2 years of testing and testing and testing and testing and trial and error just to say enough without saying too much.
Oh, you're not boring anyone. Trust me. Remember, whatever you think is kind of boring, it's only because you've learned it and you understand it now. But sitting there as someone who knows nothing about candle making, I'm like, oh, that makes sense because I just sat there and thought I'm a freak of nature. Everybody runs around loving candles all the time and I can't give them away fast enough. And here it was only because I was only experiencing truly subpar products. And that's
Yeah.
the problem. I was just experiencing products that were not very good. And then I meet someone like you, and I'm like, oh, this is what a luxury candle experience should be. So you
Yes.
have already brought so much in my life. So I do want to mention that your candles are an exclusive coconut wax blend, correct?
Yes, correct.
And is this something that you developed yourself, or was this a product that you found and you realized was right for your candles?
So every candle that I have, each fragrance is its own formula. Every fragrance requires its own formula, requires a completely different wick, whether that be the size or the type of coating that is on them. So every mix for my candles is ultimately my blend. It's my proprietary blend. I that was the first step was testing. I tested hundreds of waxes because there's so many wax. And then there's tens of thousands different types of wicks. I didn't even know. I was like, what? And they all have these code names and you're just like, what is this? It's so overwhelming. So I have one day I need to post it. I have this archive of everything from the inception of my testing to my kitchen literally being full with wick testing. And it's just like insane. And to, finally developing the product itself. But yeah, it really boils down to just a lot of patience. You have to have a lot of patience.
As is anything worth doing. And I do want to mention and also that your candles are vegan, non-toxic, and
Mhm.
cruelty-free, which as a
Yes.
lifestyle vegan, I very much appreciate that.
Yeah, there's no animal cruelty, no animal testing, non-toxic in the sense there's no parabens, phthalates, mutagen-free, carcinogenic-free. Yeah, absolutely. That was something I'm very mindful. When I was a little girl, I thought that being Mother Teresa was like a job opportunity. I wanted to be Mother Teresa when I grew up. I don't know where, but I just always had this deep love and respect for our planet. I was the one who would go out and after a rainstorm, if there were worms that were crossing the sidewalk, I would hurry up and put water on them and throw them in the grass to save them. Like it's just something that's in my DNA. I have a deep love for this planet. So I was mindful of the sourcing of the ingredients and what's in them while being mindful that I needed performance. Um, and ultimately, I used to use a primarily coconut wax blend.
Very nice. And also I did want to mention I did read on your website that you do have a commitment that one tree is planted for every
Hmm.
order and
Hmm.
partner with One Tree Planted.
Absolutely. I absolutely love that organization. And if there's anything I can do to contribute to the planet with this business, I want to do so. So I partnered with them last year, and they make it very simple, which I really appreciate. And ultimately, they ask, well, where do you want your trees to be planted? And you have the option of territory or wherever it's needed most. I chose wherever it's needed most. And what they do is once you do your annually, quarterly, weekly, biannual, semi-annual, however you choose, donations, they come back to you with where they give you updates on where the trees are planted. And it's my intention to share that with our customers as I get information as well. But yeah, absolutely. Wonderful organization. And I look forward to doing more with them.
Well, that's really great to hear. I am also part of the capture and release brigade. I don't kill any bugs ever as much as possible at this point. I'm happy to hear you were also saving the earthworms along with me. And it's clear that sustainability is really important to you. So can you walk me through some of your sustainable practices that you implement in
Yes,
creating your candles, like from ingredient sourcing to packaging?
yes. Absolutely. So one of the things that I love too, I wish I brought a candle with me. I'm unprepared, but our glassware, once you're done burning, you can clean out your glass and repurpose it as a drinking glass, or you can use it as a makeup brush holder, a Q-tip holder, whatever you'd prefer. In addition to that, all of our packaging is recyclable. That's extremely important to me. That is something that I looked for when I was finding my production partners for packaging and so forth. And then also just being mindful of my ingredients that I do use in our candles as well. It's extremely important. Like, for example, our wicks are 100% cotton. And it's just if I can do something, I want to do something, right? While being mindful of the brand itself and this earth and sustainability is something that's more important to me. I have other ideations that are currently I'm working on some prototypes for other ways to further our sustainability initiative and our purpose, but in due time. So I hope to be able to really take it up a notch in the world of sustainability with our brand and with the product itself.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. Again, I'm also one of those people that when I purchase something, you know, let's say it's like a candle product and then the candle's done, you look at the container, you're like, well, what do I do with this now? Does that just go into the trash? And I can tell you, for anyone who's just listening to the audio version of this podcast, you absolutely have to go check out her website afterwards because the containers that the candles are in are so gorgeous. I could easily see myself reusing them for a
Yeah.
multitude of purposes. And I appreciate that you did put that thought into the process. Like I said, I've often said on my other shows, I really feel like us as consumers and just humans in general have really over convenienced ourselves into a really bad situation in the planet where everything is just made to be disposable. And we're
Hmm.
so used to throwing away that we overconsume and we end up with all this extra stuff that just gets thrown away. And
Yeah.
thrown away means something. It doesn't disappear.
Yeah.
It goes
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah,
Right.
that was really important to me, and I actually am going to post a tutorial on how to clean out your glass soon, just so that it's there. I plan to actually include a little QR code on our new production boxes that show you how to clean it out, and so forth. Because why I like the minimalistic luxury, because you can repurpose it for however you choose, drinking glass, make a brush holder, Q-tip holder, and so forth.
Great. I'm glad you mentioned the tutorial. I look forward to that because I'm always struggling with like, how do I properly clean out these containers,
Yes, it's
once I'm done
really
with them.
simple. It's really simple, but I do want to include a tutorial.
Awesome. All right, let's talk a little bit about the small business aspect of this.
Sure.
What has been one of your biggest challenges that you faced as a small business owner in the candle industry, and how have you addressed it?
I don't know if I could define it as a challenge, but there was a level of importance for me to test the viability of the product, right? And being patient with that. I think that, well, I got the biggest challenge has been friends, family members, even some customers that are like, go big. And it's sharing with them the process of scaling and why I was very intentional. I launched exactly 1 year ago this month. And it was intentional to take my time because this is a new industry, it's a new product. I needed to make sure it was performing, I need to make sure it was safe. That was the highest priority. Um, and to get customer feedback. So I very intentionally took this year to test the viability of the product at a more community scale as opposed to just going guns blazing in the digital space. So I would say the biggest challenge is, and this is a blessing too, but the excitement of everybody saying go 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 go, and it's like pacing myself to really build my operations, know what my systems are going to be, hiring team members and identifying what my expectations are for them and how am I training them and guiding them to best support the company. And there's all these um, components that you just can't go missed when you're building a company. And I know everyone's different. I believe in being very hands on at the inception of building a company. As it grows and you're onboarding new team members or individuals to run departments and operations, I can say firsthand and know firsthand what the expectation should be because I've done it all, right? And I can say it in a gentle way because there's realistic record of how long production could take if we do it in this fashion, or how long this would take, or how this can perform. So I would say, like I said, I'm mindful of calling it a challenge, but it's been the patience of going through the process of understanding how I want to develop my operations and my systems. And I think I'm there now. Next year is really going to be focused on scale.
That I'm so glad you brought that up because that is really, I think, one of the number one pitfalls of small businesses and
Mhm.
entrepreneurs where they try to scale too quickly
Yes.
and they're not prepared for it. They didn't put
Yeah.
any systems in place. So I'm really
Yes.
happy. Yeah, you've thought about all that. And, you've heard the stories
Absolutely.
of people ending up on, I don't know, mentioned on Oprah's list or even on like Shark Tank, and they
Yes.
were not
They
prepared
weren't ready.
for the next step and their business fell apart. So you have to be
Yes.
very methodical and thoughtful, like, what is my next step? So thank you for bringing that
Absolutely.
up.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you can't have a stable home without an anchored foundation. And it takes time to build that foundation. So it's kind of me, settling everyone down saying one step at a time, one step at a time. And you think some of my friends in the music industry would know this because, overnight artists really are 2 to 10 year developments. But they still want stuff really fast and they want it to be big and they want it to be in retail stores and this and that. And it's like, step at a time.
Right. And we know we can see in real time now what happens to, let's say, these artists that have not had enough time to be
Yes.
nurtured. I'm not going to mention her name. She's been all over the news and I love her, but she's really having a difficult time of the notoriety and celebrity and dealing with that because she didn't have the amount of,
Oh my
let's
goodness.
say, what do you call that? Uh, not tending that time when something's getting primed, like priming the pump for something. And I think your experience in the music industry made you so
Yes.
perfect for this because you understood the time it took. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the marketing. Like I said, when I
Okay.
first saw you across the way at that pop-up, I was like, oh, I want to go talk to her. The display was beautiful. The branding
Thank
was
you.
beautiful. The non-candle girl couldn't wait to get over to the candle section, which was crazy, crazy. But I do note that you did say you've taken part in a lot of these various kind of pop-up shops around LA. Tell us about utilizing that as a way to get in
Yeah.
touch with your
Oh my
market and
goodness.
marketing.
What a blessing. I didn't even know the accessibility and the reach that Los Angeles offers for small businesses and growing businesses to connect with their community until I launched my own product business that could actually utilize it. Being in the music industry is somewhat of an isolated community. So it's been really nice to connect with the actual community of Los Angeles. But it's been lovely because it's physical, in person, real feedback, real time, and I don't have to create some sort of digital tactic to sell my products. Not saying that one shouldn't or shouldn't develop it. Ultimately, the long-term plan is to utilize those real-time testimonials from the existing customers that had and utilized the product themselves in their homes because that's real. And that's what authenticity really matters to me. I've never been about, even in the music industry, I was never about, what's the quickest fad? What's the quickest way we can get you to number one? It's like, how can we give you longevity? I was always quality over quantity, and that is applicable to my business and my candle business, Ease Essentials as well. So, really, it's been about utilizing that opportunity to connect with the customer. I mean, ultimately, that's who we're here to service. So the pop-ups have been absolutely uh, I couldn't I feel for some individuals that may be in towns where that opportunity is not there, because you do have to take a different route, but it's really been a blessing to be able to connect with the community. It's been my how can I say this, it's kind of been my guidance to what are and when are the next steps going to go into effect for the brand.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And being in LA, I mean, this is why we move here. It's just this wonderful place for all of this creativity and figure things out. And we do. We
Yeah.
have a lot of advantages of things like that. Like there's pop-ups, there's collaborations, there's partnerships that could be created and things like that. So let me then ask you regarding the marketing. So, okay, obviously candles are a very sensory experience.
Sure.
How are you communicating the essence of your brand and your products to people online?
hmm So I've been very intentional this past year on focusing on in-person physical connections. Next year is really going to be our focus on digital scale. And as I mentioned, it's really going to be pulling from those testimonials from existing customers to help reach new customers and help them understand that this product is real, that there's real love and it's authentic, and we're not out here just trying to sell something, right? And we're not using, not to say there's anything wrong with UGC, but, and I'm not saying that we won't at some point, but I really want to utilize our existing customers, ones that want to be a part of this, and helping us convey what the product offers, and because that's the most authentic way. So as we focus on the digital scale, it's going to be that, and it's also going to be focusing on the aesthetic of the brand as well. There's a lot to come, a lot that I can't even say, which I'm sure we'll meet again probably next year when you're going to be like, oh my goodness, I didn't see this coming. But yeah, I'm a visual person, right? I'm a creative. So in addition to those testimonials, it's going to be the visual campaign. And just like an artist may use a music video to display their content, I will be taking that same approach and having a very aesthetically attractive digital campaign.
Yeah, and UGC, as you mentioned, that's our user generated content, is so important, especially in the
Yeah,
age we live now, where people are very much want to hear about an experience before they buy a product. But I did notice
yeah.
on your website, as you mentioned, you have a lot of testimonials already where people are really, subscribing to the fact that these are such a special product, and
Thank
really
you.
talking about their experience with it, like myself, like non-candle person, can't wait to buy candles. And
I
that's
really
something,
appreciate that.
yeah, and that's something that you really do find in those pop-up experiences. So, good for you for really figuring that out early on and utilizing those. Again, frequently I'll talk to business owners, and they sometimes look at, pop-ups and things like that, like, oh, that's not really where my market is. It's like, no, that's the perfect place to do your
Hmm.
research, to meet prospective clients, to really get feedback on what you're doing. So, you know,
And it's, yeah, yeah, and you can cherry pick the communities. I have, sales associates that are out this weekend, and we're mindful of the communities that we are based on our price point and based on the product that, as a respectful approach. And being mindful of perhaps that community being one that is already utilizing luxury products, and but also those that haven't, so that we can introduce it. So it's strategic in where we go.
yeah, and I think that really does harken back to your experience in the music industry as well, because
Yeah.
as with your experience in both music and the candle industry now, how does storytelling play a part in both your brand and your marketing efforts for Ease Essentials?
Well, it humanizes it, right? And as humans, we need things to be humanized. We need to know that it's real. We need to know there's an authenticity behind it. And in the world of AI that we're in, so to speak. But yeah, absolutely. It's all about humanizing it, and making it real, and realizing that real people are using
That's so true. The age of AI, we don't know what's coming. We're all
it.
hoping for the best.
Yeah, yeah.
You've been such a joy to talk to, Trina. I really
Oh my
appreciate you being on
goodness.
the
Thank you.
show.
Likewise.
Let me ask you one question though, because I think this is on a lot of people's minds. And what is, how do I want to say this? What's the one milestone or a specific success story that you'd like to share with us, that you've had already with Ease Essential, that stands out particularly meaningful in your entrepreneurial journey?
Honestly, I mean, I know the answer immediately. It's those testimonials. It could, every time there's a new one that comes in, I'm like, I like gasp for air because it's so meaningful, because there's so much love that was put into this product. And like I said, and commencement of our interview, I do not take that responsibility lightly. People's homes, that is their sanctuary. It's where they rest. It's where they have their family. It's where they eat dinner. It's their intimate space. So, and I don't take that responsibility lightly. So to have, even if it was just one person say, "This is what your product has done for me," that has been a milestone, and continues to be a milestone for me. I still get excited as when I got my first review, as I as I do now. That as the creator, that milestone has really sat in with me. If that answered your question.
It absolutely does. And again, I am so excited for people to experience your products. Tell everyone where they can find you online, and maybe if you have a pop-up coming up in the next
Sure.
couple of weeks, let us know, because I'm letting you know I'm getting your show up as fast as possible.
Oh, you're so kind. So you can find us at www.easeessentials.co. That is easeessentials.co. There is no M on our website link. And you can also find us on Instagram at easeessentials.co.co. We do have quite a few forthcoming pop-ups. Even this weekend, I have some team members at Brentwood on Sunday. Um, and then on Thursday night, we're actually doing a harvest. So a seasonal evening pop-up in Studio City, which we're really excited about that as well. But every weekend, you can find us Saturdays at Marina Del Rey and Playa Vista, Sunday, Melrose, right off of La Cienega and Melrose in Beverly Hills, and Brentwood as well. And then once a month, we're in Malibu. And then we have additional pop-ups that we will post on our Instagram as they come up. And a lot to come. I will say that, we will be making announcements. In the future, we'll also be doing a brick and mortar pop-up as well. And so there's a lot to come.
Fantastic. And I do invite everyone who's listening to this to make sure you go check out the Ease Essentials Instagram to find out where you can meet Trina and her team and experience these candles in person. Because again, we have not perfected smell-o-vision yet online, but
I
I don't know, maybe
know.
AI will figure that out for us quickly,
That
because
would
I
be
think
nice.
there's so much that can really uplift a person through scent. It's true that you do sense trigger memory, almost
Hmm.
more than visual, I think the studies have said.
It's
So
very
I would love
nostalgic.
for your sense to be part of the many happy memories that are going to come over the holidays for people. So,
Thank
Trina,
you.
first of all, you have been such a joy to talk to. I love hearing
Oh,
about your journey. Again, I feel like we have so much in common. We need to get together for coffee and talk more about the
yes,
music business, because
please.
I mean, there's
That's
just
a
like,
podcast within itself.
it really is. It's just crazy. When I read that, I'm like, no wonder I bonded with her. She like literally like followed this very similar journey to me. I didn't go into
Yeah.
candles though. I went into online marketing. So that's a whole different thing. But anyway, Trina, thank you so much for being on the
Thank
show. I
you.
look forward to hearing more about your success. And again, people, go out, try these candles, because she
Yes,
converted an an ardent, yes, a very ardent anti-candle person to, I can't wait to buy these candles, not just as gifts, but to burn them in my home, which is
I
unheard
love
of for me.
that. And
Unheard
we
of.
have a wonderful holiday collection coming too. And we'll have it up early so that you can get your holiday shopping done before, the rush.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Trina, and you
Thank
have a
you.
wonderful day.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Party Podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.